The following is a production of the Ultimate Fantasy Sports Network.
Hello there, and welcome to another episode of Inside UFLB, Ultimate Fantasy League Baseball. My name is Dean Millard. I am proud to be the head of baseball for Ultimate Fantasy League Baseball for UFFS, and also co-commissioner along with Matt Soren of Ultimate Fantasy League Baseball. Man, we are just a couple of weeks away from the season kicking off officially. I'm watching the Dodgers and the Reds, great Canadian Joey Votto up to bat. Watched the Blue Jays pound the Yankees earlier today. It's just baseball is the only sport I will watch when it comes to preseason that I actually enjoy. So we're gonna have a lot of fun today. This show presented, of course, by Ultimate Franchise Fantasy Sports. You want to get the most realistic fantasy experience, whether it's baseball, hockey, basketball, football, golf, horse racing, the great game of footy coming down the pipe. We have it all at UFFS. And this is broadcast proudly on Twitch and Ultimate Fantasy Sports Network, depending on where you're watching it. We're live on Twitch. Lots of great programming that you can just scroll down and find the schedule. Right after us, actually, Show Ali and Andy McNamara are going to combine for a little free agency NFL talk. So keep it locked on this Twitch channel for that, coming up right after we're done at 6 p.m. Eastern. And you might be rewatching this on our YouTube channel, and you can watch all of our shows in replay. You can also get our shows in podcast format wherever you find your favorite podcast. Just search Ultimate Fantasy Sports Network and you can find that. We're going to have a really fun show today. We're going to bring in the AGM of Northern Fury, but he's more than just an AGM of Northern Fury. He covers the Blue Jays. He's also a very talented musician. Chris Henderson is going to be our guest. Another blockbuster deal in UFLB went down recently, and I think there might be another deal in the works as well. I'm no Larry Fisher UFHL insider, but I do have a word that there might be another trade coming down. We'll give you some details on the Seiya Suzuki auction that will be starting tomorrow. We will also give you details on the futures auction and the IFA auction, which goes this weekend. You can reach out to Brian Hernandez for all of those details, and we will have Baseball Thunderdome. You can vote on our Twitter poll question for Baseball Thunderdome, and we'll also have our top five video games. I'm repping old school 1987 RBI baseball. That might be my number one. I don't want to give it away, but here's how you can get in touch with us at the UFLB on Twitter. You can get us at UFLB_scouting, and Matt Soren heading up the Legends League at the LLB_. Info UFLB at UFFsports.com. You can also get us UFSN at UFFsports.com. And then, of course, the website, UFFsports.com. That's where all our action happens. You can buy NFTs at UltimateSportsNFTs.com. So certainly a ton of stuff going on when it comes to Ultimate Franchise Fantasy Sports, and more specifically UFLB. All right, let's get on to the action. We're going to bring in our guest of the day, and hopefully I've configured this all properly because I can't rely on prank calls. Jamie Thomas stole that gig on his very first show. But let's see if we can bring in Mr. Chris Henderson. We were talking about, not reading the comments, but some of the things that you get to write. Very cool, I think, experience. Do you have maybe as your first story or a favorite sort of piece that you've been able to write so far?
Yeah, you know what? If I think about the favorite ones, I think it's some of the interviews I've done. Like I remember talking to Alec Manoah when the COVID pandemic just started, and he was starting a gym with his brother, and just having those kind of real conversations with a guy, and then to see him, maybe, I enjoyed the article and I enjoyed the conversation, but I think just chatting with a guy who, was a relative unknown at the time, other than, those of us that really dig deep into baseball, just to chat with him about investing in a gym with his brother and about how much his family means to him, then to see him thriving the way he is these days. I think those are the ones that always stick out to me the most, is just getting a chance to chat with a young guy and seeing life go a little different for him later.
Yeah, I would say that's I love human interest stories. Like I just think, as much as, I want to know what the Dodgers are doing, sort of stats wise, and all of that stuff. I love human interest stories. That's what I love the best. Yeah. So you can find Chris's work at jaysjournal.com /baseball for brains. I love that, baseball for brains. It's pretty fitting. So what do you think of the Jays so far? The Chapman deal that just went down, and the moves that they certainly have made to add to what was a pretty good roster last year.
Yeah, you know what? I think it's wonderful to see. For those of us that have been Jays fans for a long time, we've just been pining for those years where the front office and the ownership behaves like they're all in and they're throwing their cards on the table. And I mean, we saw some of that with Anthopoulos making big moves in 2015 and 16. And we saw it in the early 90s, but there was a lot of years where we waited to see the team behave like this. And so it's awesome to see them on the cusp of a great season. I'm a huge fan of the Matt Chapman deal. He's over a year removed from that hip surgery now. And I think we're already seeing that he's going to be a different player in 2022 than he was last year. And I'm just thrilled and excited about the work that's been done to build this roster.
Yeah, like Matt Chapman is such I was watching some MLB stuff the other day, and he was getting like top 10 consideration when it comes to third baseman, simply because of his defensive play. And the fact that, this guy obviously can hit, but he's one of the best fielders, not just third baseman. He's one of the best defenders in all of baseball. I mean, I go back to the days of Kelly Gruber making snags at third base. And obviously the Bringer of Rain was fun to watch, but it gives excitement in the field for Jays fans and at bat.
Absolutely. And for this Jays team in particular, we saw Bo Bichette benefit from getting to work with Marcus Semien in the middle infield last year, and now to bring in a guy like Matt Chapman to work on the other side, I think it's not only is it going to improve the overall team defense, and we're just going to get to enjoy that all the time, but I think it's going to make Bichette a better player, and I'm just excited to see what having Chapman over on that side of the defense will do to take the pressure off Bichette, defensively and offensively. I just love the move.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about UFLB specifically. I know one of your co-owners because I grew up with him. He was actually the best man in my wedding, Steve Cole, and his brother-in-law, Michael Kerford, is the other owner and the GM of Northern Fury. How did you end up with that crew?
You know what? That's just the blessing of the internet these days, and it turns out that they've been just reading my nonsense that I put on jaysjournal.com for years, and Michael reached out to me, and we just got chatting just over Facebook. So he reached out to the Jays Journal group and said, I'd love to get in touch with Chris Henderson, and I responded and said, hey, what's up? And by the time he finished telling me all about what he's looking for me to get involved in, I was intrigued, excited, and ultimately I agreed to jump on.
Yeah, it's wild what can happen when maybe you're least expecting it and things like that. So how long have you been playing fantasy baseball?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, at least a decade, or probably a lot longer than that. I mean, I started playing fantasy football when I was like 19 or so, and baseball came not long after that. It's just a ton of fun. And for me, it's always one of those things that it keeps me paying more attention to the rest of the teams in the league, which is the thing I love about it. I'm a huge Blue Jays fan, and I write about them. And so my focus can be there a lot of the time. But that's one thing I do really like about fantasies. It just keeps my eyes a little bit everywhere.
That's one of the reasons in a few years ago, I started playing fantasy basketball. With this job, it's way too busy. I barely play any other fantasy now, but I did that because I wanted to get to know the league a little bit more. And it really is a good way to do that. So what was your initial reaction? Michael reaches out to you. He says, hey, I got this fantasy league. And you're probably thinking, oh yeah, what is it? 12 teams, 15 teams, 8, whatever it might be. When you find out, when he sends you the rule book, I'm not sure, what was the, wow, this is different than anything else moment?
Yeah, the rule book, and just some of the original conversations that we had were I realized that it was going to be a lot more intuitive, a lot more expanded than anything I'd ever done before. But I think it was when we did the prospect draft was my brain blowing out of my head moment where I just I didn't realize the full scale of just how invested owners were, and how just committed they were too. And so that brings another element of just a pile of fun. I mean, when you get that many people that are all trying to win and trying to build a good franchise, it makes it a lot of fun.
All right, we are joined by Chris Henderson, aka Santa Claus, according to Duffy 723. The message. My daughter just called Chris Santa Claus because of the beard, so that's good.
That's funny. These days I've been working as a high school teacher as a day job, and I have a student with special needs that comes by, and he often looks at me and he says, "Ho ho ho." So I'll have to. There's more than one out there. I'll have to dye it white, maybe.
I like that. I really I think that's pretty cool that there's others that kind of think of the Santa Claus motif with that one. So what was the draft like for you? I was on set for the first round, which went way faster than I thought. I couldn't believe we had got so far behind. But then I kind of took a back seat and just kind of watched and monitored. And then Sunday, unfortunately, I was driving from Regina back to Edmonton. So not a lot of time in that drive to be able to see what's going on. But what was the draft for you guys like?
That's really funny. On Sunday, I was driving from Edmonton to Regina.
We probably waved at each other on the way.
Yeah. You know what? It was fun. And I was actually on the road a lot that weekend, and so it was a bit hectic for me. I was doing lots of time spent on the phone with Michael, and thankfully we had done a lot of work in advance, doing prep work on our draft lists and that sort of thing. So it was more making discussions and revisiting discussions that we'd already had. But with a league that's that deep, and with people thinking about long-term needs versus just straight up trying to win this year as well, it was as much as it was. It was fascinating to me just to see the different strategies that people were using to try and build their teams. And I was really excited. There were times that players that were taken way earlier than I would have expected. And then there were other times that, Michael and I had a debate about a player. And then ultimately they were there the next round. So when you have 30 teams involved and that this many variables in the equation, it sure made it a lot of fun.
It's so funny. I do Tracking the Draft with Craig Button about the National Hockey League draft. And he's famous for saying there's no such thing as off the board. Whose board is it? Is it your board? Yeah. Well, they have a different board. And he goes into the NHL and he says, even when he was a GM, there's 32 teams, or back then, whatever it was. They all have different lists. Nobody's looking at Bob McKenzie's rankings and they're all drafting at that. So it's interesting. Like Shane Baz went early in that draft. Unfortunately, He's hurt now. That guy could win a Cy Young, and maybe that franchise is building for down the road. In my hockey league with Duckman's domination, and I can't wait to see a Northern Fury mug at some point. We'll be getting all of that out to the owners. But I tore down my team for 2 years and built it into what's going to be a contender. So it's amazing to see the different strategies. Now, did you guys have a specific strategy? Did you stray from it a little bit? Because you can go into a draft as planned as you want. There's always going to be, pardon the pun, curveball coming at you, and you have to pivot, react, whatever. Were there moments like that for you guys?
It was funny because we went in and we talked about a lot of different ways things could go, and we did have a kind of a strategy in place. And by the time we also, as the draft evolved and as opportunities came up, we did kind of waver once or twice. But when we looked at the bulk of our work, we kind of laughed at the end and went, well, we stuck to the plan of what we were kind of looking to do. I mean, it's not a secret when, I'm not going to give away everything by any means, but it's not a secret when you look at different rosters. Some are looking to try and win right away, right now, and others are looking to try and build a bit more of a sustainable winner, or a winner in the future at some time. And we were really happy with the way things worked out.
All right. Well, let's chat a little bit about that roster. Are you pretty satisfied with what you have had? Are you guys looking to make some deals? And, obviously when the open market becomes available, you can start getting some players from scouts. But are you guys just sitting back there? I'm loving the deals that are going down. It's great to see so many great deals. Where do you guys kind of sit in that right now?
I think we're really happy with our roster, and we're not in a hurry to make a deal. Having said that, with some of the trades that have been going on in the league, it's we're keeping our eyes open and looking for opportunity, just like we would in the draft. I mean, there's been some trades that, with all due respect to some people, I've scratched my head over and went, boy, I wish I had a chance to beat that one.
Mhm.
And we'll continue to look for those opportunities, but we're certainly not in a place where we're desperate to make any changes.
And I think you're going to find that, I can only speak from experience of being in the Ultimate Fantasy Hockey League. And obviously, baseball and hockey have vast differences, but the roster sizes are the same. Some of the general things are the same. I think you're going to find that there is a difference of opinion of people. And for a lot of people that have never been in a league this deep either, they're going to figure it out and kind of figure it out on the fly. And then you bring in score coin as well that you can use in trades. And I think we might see it's going to be shifting for a while. And you might see trades that, people value different players, and whether it's, getting rid of cap or wanting to build for the future.
Right.
It's going to be just like it was fascinating to see people build their roster through the draft. It's going to be interesting to see the different value that people have on players.
Absolutely. And I think baseball is just that way even more than any other sport, or, at least of the four major sports in North America anyway. I think, evaluating prospects is in a lot of ways, it's a fool's game. I mean, you can spend all this time in the world and there's still going to be the Travis Snyders, or, that you were sure they were going to be a star, and they just don't work out. So, I mean, in some cases, I've seen teams that are paying prices where in a few years, we might look back and go, oh my goodness, they made an amazing deal there. And in other cases, it may work out to be a disaster, but that's the beauty of fantasy sports and sports in general.
Yeah, we all have 2020 hindsight, right? We all knew Nail Yakupov was going to be a failure at the first overall pick, and a lot of people did, actually. I shouldn't say that. Even I think some of the Oilers scouts, but that's another story. Let's talk about this roster. Obviously, it starts with the Killer Bees, Bichette and Bryant, two guys, at different stages of their career, but vastly effective. Your offense probably goes as far as those guys. Like, those guys are going to be carrying you at the top, and you got some other good players as well, but that's the focus of your offense.
Yeah, absolutely. We were thrilled with the chance to draft Bo Bichette in the first round. That was somebody that we were really hoping would fall to us at number 8, and we're thrilled when it did happen. And so that's the kind of building block that we love, both in the immediate term and in the long term. And a guy like Chris Bryant, I mean, he's 30 years old. We love his positional eligibility. He can play just about everywhere, and he just signed in Colorado, so that couldn't have worked out any better for us. We were thrilled to see him. I never in a million years would have predicted that he signed with the Rockies, but the fact that he did certainly didn't hurt our cause.
My prediction, Chris Bryant will qualify everywhere by the end of the season. Like, you would think he played his whole career with the Dodgers, because they move guys around all the time, but first, third, and all 3 outfield positions for now. And who knows what happens. Like, those guys that, can play 3 or 4 positions, hit 30 home runs, 90 RBIs, whatever it might be. Those guys are almost MVPs for a franchise. They might not be the best player on the team, but they fill so many. And in a points league, games played is currency. And I keep trying to tell people that are new, that are used to head, games played is currency. And if you can get Chris Bryant in every game, that's what it is.
Absolutely, and we love a few other players on our roster like that too. I mean, Escobar can play second and third. Ty France can move around, and that was one thing that we looked at and certainly evaluated in the equation when we were making picks.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, those guys you mentioned. France, Dylan Moore plays 3 different positions. Obviously, Bryant, and then some outfielders. You also have some backup catchers as well. Catchers are always missing time. Well, every player misses time now. I was amazed the other day. I saw the stat that somebody played 162 games last year, and I'm like, wow, that is such a rarity these days.
Yeah, it doesn't happen very often anymore. And I remember when Vladimir Guerrero Jr. finally took a day off, late August last year, and people were like, "Oh, he's wearing down." It was like, he hasn't had an off day all season long, and that was after an off season of losing a bunch of weight and working out and everything else. So give the kid a break.
Yeah, no kidding. All right, let's move to pitching now. The Jays' impact there as well with Jose Barrios. I really like Jose Barrios as a pitcher. I thought it was a really good move. A lot of people didn't like it at the time, but they're going to really love it this year. Freddie Peralta, Mike Clevenger. Tell me about what you like about your pitching staff and where you guys go with that.
Yeah, the three names you just mentioned are huge pieces of the puzzle. Brios is a guy that, as a Blue Jays fan, it was probably a high price to pay. Again, that's all relative to how you see things. But when the benefit of hindsight now, when we're a few months past it, I mean, Austin Martin's the value has dropped, and others have dropped on the prospect list. So I think the Blue Jays have done really well, and I think Northern Fury are going to do really well with Barrios. He's a guy that I think, he's being talked about as a Cy Young contender this year in a lot of circles, and he's only 27 years old. He signed a nice, controllable deal that's for reasonable money for a long time. So we really like him. And speaking of all those things I just said, Peralta is on a sweetheart deal for many years. I mean, that Brewers rotation looks incredible, and I just I love what he's bringing to the table. And Clevenger, I mean, he's a guy that I was huge on before he got hurt, and I think he's going to make a really nice return to the league. And I think he could be a guy that got slept on. That a few people are going to be, how did he last that long in the draft? But we have a few other pieces I really like. Reed Dedmers is another one. That if he can reach his potential, we're going to be in really good shape. Especially in our starting rotation, and we've got some nice arms in the bullpen too.
Yeah, it's interesting. I look at, we always talk about this player has really good protection in the lineup. I think pitchers can get really good protection in the rotation too. And if you're taking a Brewers pitcher or a Dodgers pitcher, you're going to be pretty good because those are organizations that thrive with their starting pitching. But when the Jays got Ryu, I was like, geez, I don't know. He had protection in that rotation. Now the Jays are giving everybody else protection in that rotation as well. And they don't have the Robbie Ray and things like that, but they have some really interesting arms. Do you think they have to go out and get one more arm maybe late in the season, or do you think they're okay?
I think it's going to depend on health. I mean, with Gosman, Barrios, and Manoah, I think that's a really, really strong top three. Manoah, I mean, it's always interesting whenever a pitcher gets into their sophomore season because the league's had a chance to study more tape and all that sort of thing. So Manoah, I think, is in for a big season. I have nothing but faith that he's going to be a fantastic big league pitcher. But the great thing is those 4 or 5 guys, Ryu could be a 3 year, however you want to order them. But Ryu, he is much better than a lot of people are giving him credit for. He wore out at the end of last season, which shouldn't have been a shock after a shortened 60-game campaign in 2020. And Kikuchi, I mean, he was an all-star in the first half last season. And yes, he was terrible in the second half, but Pete Walker's well known for helping guys bring out the best in their abilities. And I'm really excited. I mean, to have a five-man group that's that deep, and then have guys like Ross Stripling and Nate Pearson sitting in the wings as depth, which will be needed over the course of 162 games. I think they're in a great place, and we'll figure it out, or we'll see where they're at in July as far as if they need another one for the playoff push.
My lone fantasy baseball team is hoping Nate Pearson gets into the rotation at some point because I took a chance on him last year in the waiver wire. Health, it's health with him, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, he's had, and it's never been like major arm issues. He took in his first minor league season, he had a comebacker that hit him and broke his arm. But beyond that, I mean, last year he was dealing with groin stuff and with a bit of forearm tightness. There was a misdiagnosed injury at one point. And I was actually really excited to see him come in and win the 5th starter's job this spring. I don't think it's going to happen as long as the 5 veterans are all healthy, but he's going to get a chance at some point this year, and he looked really, really good yesterday.
All right, let's go back to when you were a kid, playing baseball in the backyard, whatever it might have been. Who was your favorite player when you were a kid, and who was the team you disliked? You can use the word hate if you want to. I'll just say dislike.
That's
but
fair.
Who did you love to watch as a player, and who did you just, every time you saw them on TV, they got on your nerves?
So I was fortunate. I'm 37 years old. So I think I was 8 years old when the Blue Jays won their first World Series. And when Joe Carter hit his famous home run in '93, I was 9, and he was already my favorite player. So those 2 years cemented my Blue Jays fandom for the rest of my life, and I've always loved Joe Carter. There's something about him. He just had a great smile, and he hit dingers, and I was just a huge fan. And I wore 29 as a kid. I still do with my beer league slow pitch with my friends. I still wear 29. So Joe Carter would definitely be the guy for me. And then as far as teams that I hate, and hate is a strong word, but baseball, I think it's applicable sometimes. I didn't grow up a Yankee hater, and I probably never will hate them because my dad, the Yankees were always his second team because he cheered for or he was watching baseball before the Blue Jays existed.
Sure.
And so he grew up being a Mickey Mantle fan. And so I never really learned to hate the Yankees, but it was very early in my life that I learned that the Red Sox are to be hated because my dad was a Yankee fan and a Blue Jays fan. So there was all kinds of reason to hate the Red Sox. So to this day, I still not a fan.
That came easy then. That came really easy. It's like I grew up as an Andy Moog fan. So to this day, I cannot look at the Calgary Flames without feeling a little sick.
Yeah, that's totally understandable.
Yeah. By the way, I was Joe Carter's home run. One of the best nights that I had, me and my buddy, remember Dairy Queen used to have those little rally cap helmets? We put those on, and we think we helped win them the World Series. All my friends were 18. I was 17. So I got to drop them all off at the bar while they celebrated the Blue Jays winning the World Series that night, then pick them up and go to the after party. So I had great memories and then really boring. But you know what it was? I got to sit there in the radio and listen to it and, the aftermath. And I've said this on this show a few times. Baseball on the radio is the best. I'm a romantic. Vin Scully, I grew up, listening to him wherever I could. Baseball on the radio is the best. It's a lot of times I'll put the MLB game on and put the radio feed, especially if a guy like Bob Uecker's doing it. I want to listen to Bob.
I'm the same. And, I was thinking a little bit more about your question earlier about some of the thrills or some of the articles I'll always remember. And I wrote an article about Jerry Howarth one time. And I'm just a massive fan of Tom and Jerry, and especially Jerry. And what I'd written about was just some of the stuff that he had done. Well, whatever. We don't even need to get into that. But I'd written an article about some of the things that he had done over the course of his career. And the following day, I got an email from him. And I'd never spoken to him before. And he was thanking me for writing such a wonderful article about him and offering if I ever needed any help in the industry to please reach out to him. And so I just remember I literally got tears in my eyes and was like, man, this is this guy's a piece of my childhood. And he just emailed me a thank you letter. That's probably the number one moment.
We playing catch in the backyard, we would always have the Blue Jay games on. They would be on CKLQ radio, and Tom and Jerry were, basically part of your childhood as you grew
Absolutely.
up. And I know what that's like. In 2006, the Oilers went to the Cup final. I was covering them for Global and getting to shake Bob Cole's hand in the press boxes.
Oh, yeah.
You meet those people, and, sometimes you don't want to meet your heroes. Trust me, I've met some heroes that I'm like, yeah, I wish I didn't meet that guy. But there are some people, when you meet them and you're like, that's a special moment, and meeting Jerry and getting to interact with Tom and Jerry would have been just incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And just a class act, right? I mean, he definitely didn't have to seek me out and email me, but right. That he took the time to do that was just like, of course you did.
Yeah.
Of course you did.
Yeah, why wouldn't you? Larry Fisher says, sounds like a solid rotation and very evident the Northern Fury is in good hands with Chris. Great insights. And he says he's 32, 1984 too, so definitely relatable. Larry and I have some uncanny similarities. We have the same birthday. We were both goaltenders. We have a similar sort of family situation. So at some point I thought maybe we were separated at birth. I'm not sure. So, and then Rick Rock says, yikes, that's getting old fish. That's not old, man. I'm 1975. So if 84 is old, if the Oilers' first cup is old, then I'm ancient. So I'm 1975. So that is definitely old.
Just like prospect lists, man. It's all relative. My students think I'm old as dirt, but The weird thing about prospects is now that you're seeing guys that I covered in hockey with their kids coming up, like Mike Sillinger's kid is in the NHL. It's like, what happened? Like, this is so crazy. I'll do you one better. I teaching last year, I had a student come into my class that I had dated her mom.
Oh, wow. Wow. That was quite interesting then.
Yeah, that's always fun. That makes you feel old real quick.
That really does, for sure. Okay, so you're not just an AGM with Northern Fury, and you're not just a guy who writes baseball for the Blue Jays, although those two job titles are really cool, but you're a pretty talented musician as well. So let's just talk about your musical career. When did music start with you, and how is it carried on? Tell us a little bit about, what you do in the music world.
Yeah, well, and thank you. I put out my first album, and I kind of stumbled into my music career in very much the same way that I stumbled into writing about baseball. My dad harassed me to to sign up for this contest, and I won the contest, and the first prize was to record a song, and then suddenly my song was on the radio, and then I was getting invited to Nashville, and so that all started happening in the mid 2000s, I think 2006, 2007. Right when I was finishing university. And so I ended up recording my first record down in Nashville in 2008, and I resigned from my job by 2011 and spent about a decade on the road, just full time, and mostly in Canada. And lots in Western Canada. Would have spent a lot of time in Alberta. And lots of time in Alberta. But I've recorded 4 records over the course of my career, and I was just getting ready to promote my 4th record when the pandemic kicked in. So that kind of drastically changed my life. I had to cancel 72 shows or something like that when all went down. And it ultimately led to, I was very thankful that I had a teaching degree, because it ultimately led to me coming back to teaching, which is what I'm been doing as a day job these days. So I spend a lot of time during the day working in the classroom, and then weekends I'm doing music, and the evenings I'm obsessed with baseball.
It's 3 good. It's at least it keeps you honest and busy and not focused on one thing. Rick Rock 369 says he's 1975 as well. So here's to the old guys. That's us.
Oh yeah.
So you're an award-winning musician as well. Not just any musician. I'm going to get you to brag a little bit and tell us about some of the accolades that you've picked up.
Oh, sure. I mean, who doesn't like to do that, right? I'm based in Saskatchewan, so most of the awards. So I'm based in Saskatchewan.
No, I'm just saying I'm sorry that you're based in Saskatchewan.
Oh, yeah.
I'm a Manitoba guy, so I'm allowed to make that joke.
Yeah, that's fair.
Manitoba and Saskatchewan, we make fun of each other, and we're exactly alike.
It's true. Yeah, I was teaching my buddy from Alberta the other day that the old Gapper joke, that we're the Gap provinces, but. Yeah, no, I'm from one of the Gap provinces, and so a lot of the awards that I've won over the years have been provincial. Like I won Male Artist of the Year here in Saskatchewan. Awesome. From 2018 to 2020. I had a 3-year reign that got wrecked last year, but I'm nominated again this year, so nice. Hoping I can take that back, and won a few other ones. Just doing that kind of thing as well. Songwriter of the Year and that sort of thing. So it's nice to have those little awards to put up on your shelf.
That's amazing accomplishment. There's a ton of talented musicians in that province and all across Canada. So congratulations on that. Larry says, any relation to Joel Henderson, the hockey scout for Puck Preps and a musician also from Saskatchewan? Henderson's a common name, but figured I'd ask.
He is. He's my little brother.
No, are you kidding me?
No. And it's funny because I'm sure a few of those guys know Joel, and Dean, you probably maybe are familiar with him too, but he's a scout, does a lot of work with the WHL and a lot of the junior leagues, and he's, I could go on and on about that, but yeah, he's my little brother. And so my dad really got a kick out of the fact that not only do we both become professional musicians, but then we both started working in sports, and we have very interesting conversations when we go out for breakfast.
No doubt. You should get Joel involved in our scouting program on the UFHL.
I know he's been approached. Maybe somebody just has to sweeten the offer for him. I don't know.
That's right. Well, I can tell you high-level scouting, which has Craig Button as our head scout, we are definitely looking to expand our hockey. So we might have to have a conversation after, and maybe Joel would like to work alongside Craig in the high-level scouting that my wife owns of the scouting agency. So we might have to get into that. Any songs about baseball?
I haven't, it's funny, and I'm getting asked that. I'm going to have to fix that with my next record, because I haven't written a song. Well, I've written some songs, but I haven't recorded any songs about baseball yet. And that's going to have to change.
Yeah, I think there could be a UFLB song. Maybe you could, write
I
a
like
song
it.
for one of our shows. I use whenever I'm writing, when I worked 9 to midnight and did the Oilers post game show, I would come home and start working on the next day's show. I'm always trying to listen to music when I'm doing stuff like that.
Mhm.
What's your inspiration? Do you listen to other music? Like, how do you write a song? I'm sure you've been asked this. Does it just happen in the shower sometimes? Like, what's your method?
You know what? I'm a weird person that way. If I sit down with the intention to write a song, then I get nothing. And it's usually that it might be sitting in the shower, it might be in the middle of a baseball article. I might just have an idea that pops in my head, and 9 times out of 10, I just stop what I'm doing and write the song. And if I don't, then it's gone. And so that's the part where having a day job makes it a little bit unfortunate sometimes. Although I have written a little bit here too, but usually it's one of those things where I just like call it inspiration, whatever it is. It's just ideas that'll end up coming to me, and I try not to write after I've been listening to a bunch of music.
Mhm.
You know, as weird as that sounds, but I subconsciously rip people off all the time, and I try not to.
Yeah.
You know,
Everybody does though, right? Like
yeah,
you hear something and you get inspired with it and then you try to make it a little bit different, but it still sounds the same. And so you almost have to take a subconscious break from listening to that, do
totally.
something else and get your mind off it.
Yeah, and you know what? For this record I've been working on right now, it's been cool because my dad ended up passing away a couple of years ago, and he was a professional musician, and one of the things he left behind was like 50 reels of his bands playing live,
Wow.
and so I've been digitizing that stuff for the last couple of years, and so hearing stuff from the '60s, hearing different sounds, that's been really inspiring to me to go through that kind of stuff, and especially just with the connection with dad and all that sort of thing too. But
Oh,
it's
that would be so amazing. Like when you think about our past and, the connection that we have to people, I think that is so very cool to be able to have something like that to be able to remember.
absolutely. I always say that as far as nostalgia and memories and connections and stuff like that, music and baseball. I mean, that for me, obviously, that's the formula. But I think that I'm not the only one.
Yeah, no, I definitely think you're not the only one when it comes to that nostalgia, music, home videos, all that stuff. It's certainly what's keeps us going. All right, last question. Who do you think? Who are guys you're? I'm pretty sure I know who you're going to pick for the AL, but who are your AL NL MVP candidates going into this season?
Ooh, good question. Well, I am going to pick Vladimir Guerrero Jr. and
Yeah,
I know that's a biased pick, but
could have
the
won it
kid
last year.
he could have won it last year. I mean, Otani was a very deserving winner, of
Mhm.
course, but what impressed me the most about Vladdy this summer is that, or over the offseason, was that he wasn't satisfied with hitting 48 home runs and hitting 311 and being the best pure hitter in the American League. He won the Hank Aaron Award. Instead, he worked his tail off, and I think I read the other day that he lost 22 pounds. He looks incredible. He sounds motivated. He's talking in a very confident manner, and I just can't wait to see what he does. I mean, he's already doing it in spring training. And you know what? I'm going to pick Freddie Freeman in the National League because I think he's going to just have a spite-filled, wonderful season.
So here's a question I have as for a Blue Jay guy that covers the Blue Jays. The Blue Jays were obviously looking at Freddie Freeman.
Yeah.
What did you realistically think they would do with Vlad?
I didn't like that from the start, and I mean I've got tweets and I've got articles I can point to that back me up that I said that, and I mean there was some discussion that maybe he'd try third base again. To
Yeah.
me, that made no sense when you saw that kind of offensive production. Just let the guy focus on hitting. He did it very well. He improved big time as a first baseman. So I mean they would have. I think that what they ultimately would have had to do was split them between first base and DH, but
Yeah.
all it takes is a tweak of the knee for Springer, and now you've got a $25 million player sitting on the bench. And so, as much as I love Freeman's bat in the Blue Jays lineup, it just didn't make any sense to me. And I'm glad he's not in the American League, put it that way.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. I just didn't see the point of it. And they have a good lineup. Like, I would much rather have Matt Chapman at third and Vlad at first than Freeman at first and Vlad at, and Freeman's 32.
100%.
I mean, I think the Braves did a smart thing in moving on from him as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's always a debatable thing. I agree that he's probably had the best years of his career. We'll see how. I'm really intrigued to see how that Braves clubhouse does without him this year. I do feel like he was a heart and soul in that team, but I understand the move. And not only did he just move on from him, but he replaced him with Matt Olson and then signed him to a sweetheart deal.
Yeah.
That makes way more sense. So as much as I hate seeing Freeman move on from the team that he's played his whole career, I got to tip my cap to Alex Anthopoulos on that one because it was a pretty dang good move.
Yeah. Larry says, congrats on the awards. You likely know the guys from the Prairie States band too. They're involved in UFFS platform. They're owners in football,
really?
The Stormbreakers. Yeah. So we might have to have a concert here or something like that. Small world. He worked with Joel at FC Hockey for a couple of years and lots of Canadian country crossover in the UFFS. And Duffy 723 says, Freddie is my guy. So lastly, we're going to Vegas next month. We've got a big event there. I'd love to see baseball owners, GMs come on down. You're pretty familiar with Vegas. You might have to give us some tips. Do you play Vegas quite a bit?
You know what? I haven't done a lot in the U.S. and it's mostly just, for a guy at my level and for the way that my career has evolved, it's a big pain in the butt to get musicians' passports in order to get I'm having a brain fart here, but to get the O2 visas that you need and all that kind of thing. It's rarely been a thing that's made a lot of sense. So I haven't done a lot of working in the US. It's usually been one-offs and stuff, but it's always fun to fly into Vegas and and have some fun.
Yeah, maybe we'll have like a concert at Circa Swim or something like that. Rick Rock 369 says UFFS sing off at Stadium Circa.
I like it.
Swim at the Circa. That'd be fun.
Chris, this is Prairie States.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, this has been a lot of fun. Just quickly, where can people find your work? Obviously, your work with Northern Fury, but where can they read you and find you out there in the public?
So when it comes to baseball stuff, you can find my writing at jaysjournal.com. On Twitter, I'm at baseball4brains, baseball number 4 brains, and I'm always following along, especially this time of the year. So feel free to do that. And if you're interested in the music stuff, you can find me at chrishendersonmusic.com. And then, of course, follow along with the Northern Fury, too.
All right. This has been fun. I'd like to get to know everybody a little bit more in this league. I like what you guys are doing, and congratulations on everything with Northern Fury, the music, and Jay's Journal. Thanks so much for joining me.
My pleasure, Dean. Anytime.
All right.
Thanks for having me.
That was fun. That was a lot of fun to chat with Chris. We went long. I got to get out of here soon because the show and Andy are coming up with NFL. But that's the ways you can get in touch with us here on the program. And you know what I want to do? I want to just bring this up because I'm going to start talking about a very important event going on in UFLB. The Seiya Suzuki auction will go tomorrow at 5 p.m. Eastern time. That is tomorrow at 5 p.m. Eastern time. And you're seeing the guy who's going to be hitting home runs for the Cubbies, hopefully. That's what the winner of the auction is hoping for anyway, is a lot of home runs from Seiya Suzuki of the Cubs. So he signed a deal. The auction will be on the UFF site as usual, 5 p.m. Eastern. Will run for 24 hours. Look at that swing. And there'll be 30-second extensions, of course, whenever there is a late bid. So you can have some fun in the Suzuki auction and pick up another player. Starts at 5 p.m. Eastern tomorrow at the UFF site. Huge trade to tell you about in the UFLB. Just an absolutely massive deal to, it's just such a huge trade. that we were breaking it down between the Defenders and the Black Bears. I mean, you got Mike Trout, I think, who is the best player in the game. I know that there's a lot of people that think Mike Trout might be past his prime. I think he's still one of the best players in the game. That's my opinion. And I think he has massive Legends League appeal. So we'll see how this one ultimately shakes down in the future. But Trout, Edwin Arroyo, Jake McGee, Zach Eflin to the Black Bears for Aaron Nola, stud, Gavin Lux. I think this guy's going to come around at some point in the Dodgers organization, and a good young pitcher in Aaron Bummer. Another blockbuster trade that I absolutely love in UFLB. We've been getting a lot of them, and can't wait to get even more of them as we go, because it's just so fun to break trades and things like that. So that's the latest trade when it comes to UFLB. And now it is time to get into a little baseball Thunderdome.
To another edition of Thunderdome!
You be cocky and arrogant, even when you're getting beat.
2 men enter, 1 man leaves.
Prediction? Yes, prediction.
Hey, and right now, I've got 2 men.
It's serious.
All right, so this is how it works. I give you 2 choices. You have to pick who you would take for between these 2 guys. And the interesting thing that we're doing here is this is going to be for the rest of their career. So who are you taking for the rest of their career when it comes to these 2 guys? Vlad Guerrero or Juan Soto? For the rest of their career, who do you take between Vlad Guerrero and Juan Soto? You can vote on our Twitter page at the UFLB and have your say. Right now, Vlad Guerrero is crushing Juan Soto with 86.7% of the vote. Must be a lot of Canadians voting on that. Juan Soto, other than Shohei Ohtani, who is so valuable. By the way, Shohei Ohtani, 6-man rotation for the Angels this year, so he's going to pitch every 6th day. Shane Baz out for the Tampa Bay Rays. A couple of injury and rotation updates. But Vlad Guerrero leading the way at 86%. You can vote at the UFLB on Baseball Thunderdome and have your say. Okay, let's bring up now our top 5 list, and we are talking top 5 video games when it comes to, or baseball games rather, not just video games, but baseball games. And for me, I'm going MLB The Show. That's the current game. It's pretty awesome, and it's got all the bells and whistles. When I was a kid, Bases Loaded was a really cool video game. Didn't have actual players, but it was pretty awesome. Out of the Park is a great simulator game, something we're actually looking into for the Legends League. So I think you might be interested in learning more about that. I played Stratomatic a lot as a kid. I think it was awesome. I call it Dungeons and Dragons for sports fans, and I love it. I still make Trish play every once in a while. And number 1, I'm repping it right now. I'll get a better shot. Well, you might not be able to see me because of the sun, but RBI Baseball, not sure which way I should go, from 1987. 1987 was RBI Baseball. And it was great. It had real players' names. I fell in love with the Cardinals a little bit. And then the next year after that, 88, Kirk Gibson. Best moment of my baseball life watching is when I fell in love with the Dodgers. But that 1987 RBI Baseball game was so fun. I absolutely loved it. So that for me is number 1 for sure. All right, lots of contracts, lots of arbitration going on. We are going to get the contracts all sorted out on the Google Doc sheet and Fantrax very shortly as we go. Have a little patience with us for that. Of course, Inside UFLB is proudly broadcast here on Twitch Live, and then you can catch the rebroadcast on our YouTube channel, Ultimate Fantasy Sports Network. It's all part of the grand plan of UFFS. If you'd like to get your show on UFSN, it's UFSN at UFFsports.com. Final piece of advice from Crash Davis of Bull Durham.
You be cocky and arrogant, even when you're getting beat.
Even when you're losing, be cocky and arrogant. I always say ban the shift, but they are going to ban the shift. So I'm just going to say I'm happy that they are banning the shift. And I want to remind you that coming up next, we've got Show Ali and Andy McNamara talking some NFL free agency. I will turn things over to those two gentlemen right now. Thank you so much for watching Inside UFLB. Enjoy preseason baseball. It's the only sport I like preseason action in. Remember, ban the shift at your local baseball game and enjoy the baseball. We'll see you later.